Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled back the fabric, her pregnant belly pressing against the dusty attic floor. White robes. Pointed hoods. Her breath stopped. "No," she whispered, backing away so fast she nearly fell through the hatch. "No, no, no." She was 7 months pregnant. She was black. And she had just discovered that the house she bought to protect her unborn child had been a Klan meeting place for decades. The symbols stared back at her, like ghosts demanding to be seen. Her phone shook in her hand as she dialed 3 numbers she never thought she would need. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah pressed her palm against her belly, feeling her baby kick. "I found something in my house," she said, her voice breaking. "Something terrible. Something that's been hidden here for a very long time." Subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments which city or country you are watching from. Stay with me until the end of this story. What Sarah Mitchell discovered that day would change not just her life, but an entire town's understanding of itself. 14 apartments in 32 years. That was Sarah Mitchell's life before the house on Cedar Lane. 14 different landlords. 14 different eviction notices waiting to happen. 14 different nights lying awake calculating how many days she had left before someone knocked on her door and told her to leave. She was done with that life. She had to be done. "You're pregnant," the doctor had said 3 months ago, and Sarah had gripped the edge of the examination table so hard her knuckles turned white. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. About 6 weeks along." "Do you have support? A partner family nearby?" Sarah had laughed. It came out wrong, more like a sob. "I have me. That's what I have." The doctor's face had softened with something that looked like pity. Sarah hated pity. She had survived 32 years without it. "There are resources," the doctor began. "I'm keeping it." Sarah's hand moved to her stomach before she realized what she was doing. "I'm keeping this baby, and I'm going to give it everything I never had." "What's that?" "A home, a real one, the kind that doesn't disappear." Finding the house had happened at 2 in the morning when sleep refused to come, and the internet offered its endless scroll of possibilities. The listing had been buried on the 3rd page of results, priced so low that Sarah checked twice to make sure she was reading it correctly. She called before sunrise. "Who the hell is this?" The man's voice was rough with sleep. "I'm calling about the house on Cedar Lane, in Willowbrook." Silence. Then a bitter laugh. "Lady, it's 5 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry, but I need to see that house, today. Can you show it to me? You know anything about it?" "I know the price." "Then you know something's wrong with it." Sarah closed her eyes. Her baby was the size of a raspberry, the pregnancy app had told her. A raspberry with a heartbeat growing inside her while she lived in the apartment she couldn't afford for much longer. "I don't care what's wrong with it," she said. "I care if I can fix it. Can you show me the house or not?" The drive to Willowbrook took 4 hours. Sarah pulled over twice to vomit, the morning sickness hitting her in waves that left her shaking. She ate crackers in the parking lot of a gas station and stared at her reflection in the rear-view mirror. "We can do this," she told herself. Or maybe she was telling the raspberry. "We have to do this." Willowbrook announced itself with a sign that looked older than Sarah's grandmother. Population 3,847. Established 1892. The kind of town that appeared on postcards and in nightmares, depending on who you were and what color your skin happened to be. Sarah felt eyes on her the moment she crossed the town line. A woman watering her lawn stopped mid-spray to watch Sarah's car pass. A man on a porch lowered his newspaper. 2 teenage boys on bicycles actually turned around to follow her for half a block before losing interest. "Small towns," Sarah muttered. "Same everywhere." But something about this felt different, heavier, like the air itself was paying attention. The house on Cedar Lane sat at the end of a street that looked like it had given up. Sarah pulled into the driveway and killed the engine, staring at the structure that might become her home. It was worse than the pictures. Much worse. The porch didn't just sag. It looked like it was trying to crawl away from the house. The siding had peeled so badly in places that the wood underneath showed through like exposed bone. And the roof. Sarah looked up at the roof and felt her stomach drop. You must be the crazy one who called at 5 in the morning. She turned to find a man walking toward her from the property next door. White, maybe mid-60s, with hands that looked like they had spent a lifetime working and a face that gave nothing away. I'm Sarah Mitchell. Earl Henderson. He stopped at the edge of her driveway, keeping distance between them. His eyes dropped to her stomach, then back to her face. You're pregnant. I noticed. And you want to buy this house. That's the plan. Earl shook his head slowly. Lady, I've lived next to this property for 40 years. I've watched it eat 3 different owners. One died in there. One went crazy. One just disappeared one night and never came back. He paused. You sure you want to be number 4? Sarah's hand moved to her belly. Inside her, the raspberry with a heartbeat was counting on her to be brave. What happened to them? The owners? Life happened. This house happened. Earl looked at the structure with an expression Sarah couldn't read. Some places hold on to things that should have stayed buried. That's the second time someone said something like that to me today. Earl's eyes sharpened. Who else said it? Woman at the gas station in town, when I asked for directions. Sarah studied his face looking for a reaction. She told me some houses have memories. Then she walked away before I could ask what she meant. For a long moment, Earl said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Front door sticks. You have to lift and push at the same time. He held out the key, but didn't step closer to give it to her. Sarah had to walk to him to take it. I'll be next door if you need anything. Try not to fall through the floor. Comforting. Wasn't trying to be. The smell hit Sarah the moment she opened the door. Old wood. Dust. Something else underneath, something metallic that made her nose wrinkle. She covered her mouth with her hand and stepped inside. Dark. Too dark for midday. Sarah felt along the wall for a light switch, found one, flipped it. Nothing happened. Power's been off for 6 years, Earl called from outside. There's a flashlight in my truck if you need it. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. The hallway stretched ahead of her like a throat, and Sarah had the sudden irrational feeling that the house was swallowing her. She pushed forward anyway, her sneakers creaking on floors that dipped and rose beneath her weight. Living room to the left. Empty. Kitchen at the end of the hall. Cabinets hanging crooked. Bathroom with a rusted tub and a cracked sink. Everything worn. Everything tired. Everything waiting. But when she climbed the narrow stairs and found the small bedroom at the top, the one with the window facing east, something shifted inside her. Morning light poured through the dirty glass, catching dust motes that swirled like tiny stars. Sarah stood in that empty room and pressed both hands against her stomach. This is your room, she whispered. This is where you're going to sleep. This is where I'm going to sing to you and read to you and tell you that everything's going to be okay. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister Lisa. Please tell me you didn't drive 4 hours to look at a death trap. Sarah typed back, it's not a death trap, it's a fixer-upper. Same thing, call me. Sarah ignored the message. She had a house to buy. The closing happened 3 weeks later. The bank officer looked at Sarah like she had lost her mind. You understand this property is being sold as is. No warranties, no guarantees. The inspection report lists 47 separate issues. I read it. The roof alone is going to cost you. I read it. Sarah picked up the pen. Where do I sign? Moving in took everything she had. 3 trips in a borrowed truck. Boxes she had saved from her last 4 moves, their cardboard soft with use. By the time she carried the last box inside, her back was screaming and her ankles had swollen to twice their normal size. Earl was waiting on her porch. Didn't think you'd actually go through with it, he said. Surprise? Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead. You going to help me unload or just stand there looking skeptical? Something flickered across Earl's face. It might have been a smile. Give me a box. They worked in silence for an hour, carrying boxes inside, stacking them where Sarah directed. When the truck was empty, Earl stood in her living room, looking up at the ceiling where water stains spread like bruises. "Roof's your biggest problem," he said. "You let that go, nothing else matters. I've seen houses die from the top down." "I know. I can't afford a professional." "Then you'll have to do it yourself. After the baby comes, I can show you the basics. I've patched my own roof 3 times. Sarah studied him, trying to figure out his angle. "Why would you help me?" "Because I'm old, and I've got nothing better to do." He moved toward the door. "And because someone helped me once, long time ago. Guess I'm paying it forward." "Who helped you?" Earl stopped with his hand on the doorknob. His back was to her, but Sarah saw his shoulders tense. "Doesn't matter now. He's dead." He opened the door. "Welcome to Willowbrook, Sarah Mitchell. Try to survive it." The first weeks passed in a blur of small repairs and growing exhaustion. Sarah learned to fix a leaky faucet, patch holes in drywall, replace the locks on doors that hadn't been secured in years. She worked until her body forced her to stop, then she rested until she could work again. The neighbors watched. They always watched. The woman across the street, Mrs. Patterson, watered her lawn every day at exactly 4 p.m. She never waved. She never spoke. But her eyes followed Sarah's every movement. The young couple 3 houses down had a baby that cried at night. Sarah could hear it through her thin walls, and sometimes she would lie in bed with her hand on her stomach, wondering if her own child would cry like that. The old man at the end of the street walked his dog past her house twice a day. He always slowed down when he reached her property. He always looked at her windows. He never stopped. "They're curious," Earl said one afternoon when he found Sarah standing in her yard watching the watchers. "Town doesn't get many newcomers." "Is that all it is? Curiosity?" Earl didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower than before. "This town has a long memory, Sarah. Longer than most people realize. Some folks here remember things that happened before I was born. Things they don't talk about, but they haven't forgotten." He paused. "You being here stirs things up. Reminds people of what they'd rather not remember." "What does that mean?" But Earl was already walking away. "Fix your roof," he called over his shoulder, "before the weather turns." Sarah's sister called that night. "How's the money pit?" "It's not a money pit, it's a home." "Sarah." Lisa's voice carried the weight of 30 years of sisterhood. "I looked up that town. Willowbrook." "Don't." "There were lynchings there, in the 20s, the 30s. They never caught anyone." Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. "That was 100 years ago." "Was it?" Lisa paused. "Some places don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." "I can't afford to think like that. I have a baby coming. I have a house. I have a chance to build something real." "Just be careful, please. For me. For that baby." Sarah hung up, but Lisa's words echoed in her mind long after the call ended. Some places don't change. They just get better at hiding. The storm came 3 weeks later. Sarah had watched the weather reports tracking the system as it moved across Georgia. They predicted heavy rain, maybe some wind, nothing too serious, nothing to worry about. They were wrong. It started softly, almost gently. Sarah lay in bed, one hand on her swollen belly, listening to the rain tap against her roof. For a few minutes, it was almost peaceful, a lullaby from the sky. Then the intensity changed. The tapping became pounding. The pounding became assault. Sarah sat up in bed, her heart racing with an alarm that came from somewhere deep and ancient. She heard it before she saw it. Dripping. Inside her house. Where dripping should never be. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and ran toward the living room. The beam caught it immediately. A dark stain spreading across the ceiling, growing larger as she watched, and beneath it water falling onto her hardwood floor. No. Sarah's voice was swallowed by the storm. No, no, no. She ran for buckets, towels, anything that could catch the water. But more leaks appeared. One in the kitchen, one in the hallway. One directly above the nursery, the room she had painted yellow with so much hope. By midnight, Sarah was sitting on her living room floor, surrounded by containers, catching water, crying harder than she had cried since she was a child. Her phone rang. Earl. You okay over there? I can see your lights on. The roof. Sarah's voice broke. The roof is falling apart. It's everywhere. The water is everywhere. Stay put. I'm coming over. He was there in 5 minutes, wearing a raincoat and carrying flashlights. Together they moved through the house, assessing damage, repositioning containers, doing what little could be done until the storm passed. It's bad, Earl said finally. Worse than I thought. Can I fix it myself? Maybe, if you're careful. If you take your time. He looked at her stomach. After the baby. I can't wait that long. Another storm like this and I'll lose everything. Sarah, you're 7 months pregnant. You can't climb on a roof. Watch me. Earl stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. You remind me of someone, he said quietly. Someone I knew a long time ago. Same stubborn streak. Same refusal to quit. Who? But Earl just picked up his flashlight and moved toward the door. Storm should pass by morning. Come find me when you're ready to learn about roofs. I'll teach you what I can. Earl. Sarah stopped him at the threshold. What happened to the person I remind you of? His hand tightened on the doorknob. She died, he said. This town killed her. Slowly. Quietly. The way it kills everything that doesn't belong. He was gone before Sarah could respond. The storm passed by dawn, leaving devastation behind. Sarah walked through her house like a soldier surveying a battlefield. The nursery ceiling would need to be completely replaced. The living room floor had buckled in one corner. Water stains covered surfaces she had spent weeks painting and repairing. But she was still standing. The house was still standing. And somewhere inside her, a baby was still growing, still counting on her to figure this out. She made her decision before the sun fully rose. She was going to climb that roof. Today. Before she lost her nerve. Before another storm came. Before the house had a chance to break her completely. This is crazy, she said out loud to her empty kitchen. This is absolutely crazy. Her baby kicked in response. Hard. Like an agreement. Okay, Sarah whispered. Okay. Let's be crazy together. The ladder stood against the house like a judgment. Sarah had borrowed it from Earl the night before, had tested it 3 times, had watched 4 different YouTube videos about roof safety. She knew intellectually that she was as prepared as she could be. Her body didn't believe her. Her hands were shaking as she gripped the first rung. Her legs felt weak. Her belly, larger than it had ever been, shifted her weight in ways that made balance feel impossible. You can do this, she told herself. You have to do this. First rung, second rung, third. Sarah climbed with her eyes fixed on the metal in front of her, refusing to look down, refusing to think about how far the ground was getting. Halfway up, she had to stop. Her arms were trembling. Her breath was coming too fast. Spots danced at the edges of her vision. Please, she whispered. To God, to the universe, to her unborn child. Please help me get through this. She kept climbing. When her hands finally reached the edge of the roof, Sarah pulled herself up and over with strength she didn't know she had. She lay flat against the shingles for a long moment, gasping, waiting for her heart to slow down. Then she sat up and looked around. The roof stretched before her like a map of failures. Different materials from different decades. Patches covering patches. Nails working loose. Dark spots where water had eaten through. She began to work, moving slowly, testing each surface before trusting it with her weight. She found the areas above the living room, above the nursery. She found gaps and holes and damage that would take weeks to fully repair. And then she found something else. Near the front slope of the roof, close to the small attic window, a section of shingles rose slightly higher than the rest. Not much, maybe an inch, but enough to catch Sarah's eye. She moved closer, her curiosity overcoming her caution. The raised section was different from the surrounding material, newer, though still old. The shingles were arranged too carefully, too deliberately. Her heart began to beat faster. She reached for the flat bar she had brought up and slid it under the raised edge. The material resisted for a moment, then gave way with a dry, brittle sound. One shingle lifted, too easily. Another came loose. Beneath them, instead of the underlayment, she expected Sarah found a plank laid crosswise, darker than the surrounding wood, held by nails that had been placed to be removed. "What the hell?" she breathed. She kept working. Another shingle, another plank, and then darkness. Not ordinary shadow. Something deeper, something enclosed. Sarah turned on her phone's flashlight. The beam cut through dust that hung in the air like smoke. It caught cobwebs stretched thick between hidden beams, and at the edge of the light shapes that made no sense. Bundles, wrapped, arranged with a precision that made Sarah's skin crawl. She counted without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 bundles sealed and waiting hidden in a space built specifically to conceal them. Sarah sat back, her breath coming in short gasps. This wasn't storage. This wasn't forgotten junk. Someone had gone to enormous trouble to create this hiding place. She should climb down. Call someone. Let this become someone else's problem. But her hands were already reaching into the darkness, already gripping the rough fabric of the nearest bundle, already pulling it toward the light. It was heavy, dense with something rigid inside. She wrestled it through the opening, her pregnant belly making the movement difficult, her arms burning with the effort. When the first bundle lay on the roof beside her, Sarah stared at it with a dread she couldn't explain. The fabric was old, coarse, like burlap but softer with age. Metal glinted beneath the wrapping. Clasps, functional, designed to be opened and closed many times. Her hands were shaking as she reached for the first clasp. It released with a sound like a sigh. Sarah folded back the fabric, layer by layer, her breath catching with each fold. White. The first thing she saw was white. Thick fabric, old. Yellowed with age, but unmistakable in its purpose. Folded with military precision. She kept pulling back layers, her movements growing frantic. A pointed hood emerged from the folds. Sarah scrambled backward so fast she nearly slid off the roof. Her foot caught on a loose shingle. Her body pitched sideways. For one terrible second she felt gravity reaching for her, felt the edge approaching. Her hand shot out. Her fingers caught a nail head, rusted, sharp. It bit into her palm and held. She lay flat against the roof, breathing hard blood dripping from her hand, staring at the white fabric that had spilled from the bundle. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She was pregnant. She was black. And she had just discovered Klan robes hidden in her house. Her baby kicked. Hard. Harder than ever before. Sarah pressed her bloody hand against her belly and made herself breathe. 1 breath. 2. 3. When she trusted herself to move again, she sat up slowly, carefully, keeping her weight low. The bundle lay where she had dropped it. The white fabric seemed to glow in the morning light, accusatory and undeniable. She had to know how bad it was. She had to understand what she was dealing with. With hands that wouldn't stop trembling, Sarah pulled out the remaining bundles. 4 more, each one heavy, each one wrapped with the same terrible care. By the time she had them all on the roof beside her, she was covered in sweat and dust and tears. She lowered them through the attic window one by one. Her arms screamed. Her back felt like it might break. Her injured hand left bloody smears on the rope. But she kept going. When she finally climbed down from the roof, her legs gave out the moment her feet touched solid ground. She sat in her yard staring up at the house trying to process what she had found. Her phone buzzed. A text from Earl. "Saw you on the roof. You okay?" Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "Come over, now. I need to show you something." Earl arrived in 3 minutes. His face changed the moment he saw her sitting in the dirt, her hand bleeding, her clothes covered in dust. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I found something." Sarah's voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat, distant. "In the roof, hidden. I need you to see it." She led him inside, up the stairs, to the attic hatch that hung open like a wound. "Sarah, what the hell is going on? Just look." Earl climbed up. Sarah waited below, listening to his footsteps on the attic floor, listening to the silence that followed. When he came back down, his face was white. "How long?" Sarah asked. "How long has that been up there?" "I don't know." Earl's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Sarah, I didn't know." "But you knew something." She grabbed his arm. "What did you mean when you said this town killed her? The woman I remind you of. What happened here?" Earl looked at her with eyes that had suddenly aged 20 years. "Her name was Ruth," he said. "Ruth Henderson, my sister. She was 17 when she died. They said it was an accident. A fire in the old church on the edge of town." He paused. "But everyone knew. Everyone knew it wasn't an accident. And no one did anything. No one ever did anything. When, 1962, 63 years ago, and I've been living next to this house ever since, trying to forget what this town did to my family." His hand was shaking now. "I never knew. I never knew the proof was right here. Right next door. All these years." Sarah's mind was racing. "The documents. There are documents in one of the bundles. Names, dates, locations." Earl's head snapped up. "What names?" "I don't know yet. I didn't look closely. But Earl, if this proves what happened to your sister, then this town is going to burn." His voice was hard now, cold. "Metaphorically speaking, but it's going to burn." Sarah climbed back into the attic. Earl followed. Together they knelt beside the bundles, and Sarah began to open them fully one by one, while Earl watched with an expression that shifted between horror and something that looked almost like hope. More robes, hoods, sashes with insignia, metal badges marking rank and position, an entire unit's worth of equipment preserved and hidden. Then the documents. Sarah's hands were shaking as she lifted the first stack. Names jumped out at her. Dates, locations. Everything written in careful handwriting, organized with a precision that suggested importance. "My God," Earl breathed. "These are membership records, attendance logs, meeting minutes." Sarah scanned the pages, her eyes catching on surnames she recognized, names she had seen on storefronts downtown, on street signs, on the mailboxes of her neighbors. Then she saw a name that made her blood run cold. "Earl." Her voice was barely audible. "Look at this." She pointed to an entry dated March 15th, 1962, 2 weeks before the church fire that killed Ruth Henderson. The entry read, "Special action approved. Target colored church on Miller Road. Responsible parties, J. Patterson, W. Crawford, H. Henderson." Earl made a sound like he had been punched. "Henderson." He grabbed the paper from Sarah's hands. "My father's name was Harold. Harold Henderson." He looked up at her with eyes that had gone completely wild. "My father was part of the group that killed my sister." "Earl, we don't know. It says it right here," he was shouting now. "Special action, target responsible parties. My father, my own father." His legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard on the attic floor, the paper clutched in his hands, his whole body shaking. Sarah didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to something like this? "I was 8 years old," Earl whispered. "When Ruth died, I remember my father crying at the funeral, holding me, telling me that some evil people had taken my sister from us. That we had to be strong, that we had to keep going. He laughed, but it was a terrible sound. He was lying. He was lying the whole time. He helped kill her, his own daughter, and then he cried at her funeral like he was the victim. Earl, I'm so sorry. Don't. He looked up at her. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Be as angry as I am right now. He stood up, still clutching the paper. These names, Patterson, Crawford, Henderson, these families are still here. Still in Willowbrook. Still walking around like nothing happened. Patterson. Sarah's mind flashed to the woman across the street. The one who watered her lawn every day at exactly 4 p.m. The one who never waved. Mrs. Patterson. Her husband's grandfather, Joseph Patterson, owned the hardware store downtown until he died in 1989. Pillar of the community, they called him. Founding member of the Rotary Club. Earl's voice dripped with bitterness. Murderer of 17-year-old girls. Sarah thought about the way Mrs. Patterson watched her, the way the whole neighborhood watched her. Had they known? Had they always known what was hidden in this house? I have to call the police, Sarah said. This is evidence of crimes, real crimes. They need to know. The police. Earl laughed again, that same terrible sound. The chief of police is named Crawford, William Crawford, named after his great-grandfather. He held up the paper. The same great-grandfather who's listed right here as a responsible party. Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her. Or maybe it was just her understanding of the world crumbling in real time. Then what do I do, Earl? What do I do with this? Earl was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Calmer. More resolved. You call anyway. You call 911. You report what you found. And then you make sure that everyone sees it. Everyone. Not just the police, the newspapers, the TV stations, the whole damn country if you have to. Why? He looked at her with something like admiration. You found the proof that this town has been hiding for 60 years. You can't let them bury it again. Sarah nodded slowly. Her hand moved to her belly, where her baby was moving restlessly, sensing her distress. I didn't ask for this, she said. I just wanted a home. I just wanted somewhere safe for my child. I know. Earl's voice softened. But sometimes God or fate or whatever you want to call it puts us in places we didn't expect, gives us burdens we didn't choose. The question is what you do with it. He paused. What are you going to do, Sarah Mitchell? She looked around the attic, at the robes, the hoods, the documents that contained names and dates and proof of horrors that should never be forgotten. Then she looked at Earl, this man who had just learned that his own father had helped kill his sister. I'm going to burn this town down, she said quietly, metaphorically speaking. Earl almost smiled. That's the stubborn streak I was talking about. Sarah pulled out her phone. Her bloody hand left a smear on the screen, but she didn't care. She dialed 911, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah took a deep breath. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I live at 147 Cedar Lane in Willowbrook, Georgia. I was repairing my roof this morning, and I discovered a hidden space containing historical materials. Ku Klux Klan robes, documents, membership records, evidence of crimes committed in this town going back decades. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long pause. Ma'am, can you repeat that? Sarah repeated it, word for word. When she finished, the silence stretched even longer. Stay where you are, the operator finally said. I'm dispatching officers to your location. Do not touch anything else. Do not let anyone into the house. Do you understand? I understand. Are you safe? Is anyone there with you? Sarah looked at Earl, who was still staring at the paper that bore his father's name. I have someone with me, she said. We're safe. For now. Help is on the way, ma'am. Stay on the line. Sarah didn't stay on the line. She had another call to make first. She dialed her sister. Sarah. It's early. What's wrong? You were right. Sarah's voice cracked. About Willowbrook. About some places not changing. About things being hidden. She took a shaky breath. Lisa, I found something. Something terrible. And I'm about to tear this whole town apart. Lisa's voice exploded through the phone. What do you mean tear the town apart? Sarah, what the hell is going on? I found Klan robes in my attic, documents, names of people who still live here, evidence of a murder from 1962. Sarah's words came out in a rush. The police are coming. I don't know what's going to happen. Get out of there, right now. Get in your car and drive. I can't run, Lisa. This is my house. This is where I'm raising my baby. Sarah, listen to me. Lisa's voice dropped to something deadly serious. You're a pregnant black woman who just found evidence that could destroy powerful white families in a small southern town. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what they might do to protect themselves? Sarah looked at Earl, who was still holding the paper with his father's name. His hands hadn't stopped shaking. I understand, she said, but I'm not running. Not this time. Not ever again. She hung up before Lisa could argue. The first police car arrived 11 minutes later. Sarah had counted every second standing at her window watching the street waiting. Earl stood beside her silent, his face a mask of emotions she couldn't read. That's Crawford's car, Earl said quietly. The chief himself, coming to see what you found. Sarah's stomach tightened. You said his great-grandfather's name was in those documents. That's right. So the man investigating this crime might be related to the people who committed it. Welcome to Willowbrook. The knock on her door was hard, official. Sarah took a breath, placed her hand on her belly, and went to answer it. Chief William Crawford was a big man, tall, broad. The kind of presence that filled a doorway and made rooms feel smaller. He looked at Sarah with eyes that gave nothing away. Ma'am, I'm Chief Crawford. You called 911 about some kind of historical materials. That's right. Mind if I come in? Sarah stepped aside. Crawford entered, followed by a younger officer who looked barely old enough to shave. The chief's eyes swept across the living room, the water-stained ceiling, the buckets still sitting where Sarah had left them. Then his gaze landed on Earl. Henderson, didn't expect to see you here. I live next door. Came over when I heard Sarah found something. Something? Crawford's voice was flat. That's one way to put it. He turned back to Sarah. Dispatch said you found Klan materials, robes, documents. That accurate? It's accurate. They're in the attic. Show me. Sarah led him up the stairs through the hallway to the hatch that still hung open. She climbed up first. Crawford followed his weight, making the ladder groan. The bundles lay where she and Earl had left them, the robes spilling out, the documents scattered, the photographs she hadn't even fully examined yet. Crawford stood very still for a long moment. Then he walked to the nearest bundle and crouched down, his movements careful, controlled. When did you find these? This morning. I was fixing the roof. There was a hidden space. I didn't know it was there. You touched them. I had to move them from the roof. I couldn't leave them exposed to the weather. Crawford picked up one of the documents. Sarah watched his face as he read, watched for any sign of recognition, any flicker of guilt. She saw nothing. His expression remained perfectly blank. These names, he said finally. You recognize any of them? Some. Patterson, Crawford. Sarah paused deliberately. Henderson. Crawford's head turned toward the hatch where Earl's face had appeared. You saw these, Henderson? I saw them. And? Earl climbed fully into the attic. He walked to where Crawford was crouching and pointed at the entry dated March 15, 1962. That's my father's name, Harold Henderson, listed as a responsible party for an action against a colored church on Miller Road. Earl's voice was steady now, cold. That church burned 2 weeks later. My sister Ruth was inside when it happened. She was 17 years old. Crawford stood slowly. He was taller than Earl by several inches, bigger, more powerful in every way that small towns measured power. That was 60 years ago, Henderson, before I was born. And yet, your great-grandfather's name is right there on the same page. William Crawford Sr., founding member. The two men stared at each other. The air in the attic felt thick enough to choke on. I'm going to need to secure this scene, Crawford said finally. Call in some specialists. This is beyond our usual scope. I want outside investigators, Sarah said. Not local. Someone who doesn't have family connections to these documents. Crawford turned to look at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or fear. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but you're making some serious accusations. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm asking for an independent investigation. That's my right. You're right. Crawford smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You've been in this town for a month, and you're already telling us how to run things. Someone has to, because it seems like this town has been running from the truth for 60 years. The younger officer appeared at the hatch. Chief, there's more cars arriving, and some neighbors are gathering outside. Crawford's jaw tightened. Keep them back. Nobody comes near this house until I say so. He looked at Sarah one more time, and she saw it clearly now. Not just anger, fear, real fear. Whatever was in these documents, whatever secrets they contained, Crawford knew they were dangerous. Stay here, he said. Don't talk to anyone. Don't show anyone else what you found. Understood? I'll talk to whoever I want. This is my house. Crawford moved closer. Close enough that Sarah could smell his cologne. Close enough that she had to fight the urge to step back. Let me make something clear, he said quietly. This town has a way of dealing with problems, always has. You seem like a smart woman, smart enough to understand what I'm saying. Sarah's hand moved to her belly. Her baby kicked against her palm. Is that a threat, Chief Crawford? It's advice. Free advice. Take it or leave it. He turned and headed for the hatch. I'll have officers posted outside, for your protection. He climbed down. Sarah heard him talking to the younger officer, heard footsteps on her stairs, heard her front door open and close. Earl appeared at her side. He's scared, Earl said. I've never seen William Crawford scared of anything. But right now, he's terrified. Good. Sarah looked at the documents scattered across her attic floor. He should be. By noon, Cedar Lane had transformed. 3 police cars sat in front of Sarah's house. Yellow tape stretched across her lawn. And neighbors had gathered at the edges of the perimeter, watching, whispering their faces, a mixture of curiosity and something darker. Sarah stood at her window, watching them watch her. Mrs. Patterson was there, standing perfectly still, her watering can forgotten in her hand. The old man who walked his dog was there. The young couple from 3 houses down. Even people Sarah had never seen before, drawn by the commotion, hungry for information. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. Lisa. Numbers she didn't recognize. One text from a 404 area code that simply said, "Saw the police at your house. You okay?" She didn't respond to any of them. Earl had gone home to make some calls of his own. I know a reporter in Atlanta, he'd said. Someone who won't be afraid to tell this story. Someone Crawford can't control. Sarah was alone when the knock came. Not on her front door, which was blocked by police tape. On her back door. Soft. Almost hesitant. She found an elderly black woman standing on her back porch. Small. Frail. Hands trembling with age or emotion or both. I know what you found, the woman said before Sarah could speak. I've been waiting 60 years for someone to find it. Sarah stared at her. Who are you? My name is Beatrice Coleman. I was Ruth Henderson's best friend. I was supposed to be in that church the night it burned. I would have been if I hadn't gotten sick at the last minute. Her voice cracked. I've been carrying that guilt my whole life, the guilt of surviving when she didn't. Sarah opened the door wider. Come in, please. Beatrice moved slowly, her joints protesting each step. Sarah helped her to a chair in the kitchen, then sat across from her waiting. I was 16 in 1962, Beatrice began. Ruth was 17. We'd known each other since we were babies. Our mothers were friends. Our grandmothers were friends. That's how it was for black folks in this town. We stuck together because we had to. The church fire, Sarah said. The documents say it was planned, a special action. Beatrice nodded, her eyes filling with tears. We knew. The whole black community knew it wasn't an accident. Ruth wasn't the only one who died that night. There were 3 others. A mother and her 2 children who had come for the prayer meeting. She paused. But no one would listen. No one would investigate. The fire marshal ruled it electrical. Case closed. Did you try to tell anyone? My father tried. He went to the sheriff. The sheriff told him to go home and keep his mouth shut if he knew what was good for his family. Beatrice's hands twisted in her lap. 2 days later, our barn burned down. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. Sarah felt sick. So everyone just stayed quiet. What choice did we have? This was 1962, child. We couldn't vote. We couldn't testify in court. We couldn't do anything except survive. Beatrice looked at Sarah with eyes that had seen too much. But I never forgot. I never stopped hoping that someday someone would find proof. Someone would make them answer for what they did. The documents in my attic have names, dates, locations. They even have meeting minutes where they discussed the fire beforehand. Beatrice made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Proof. After all these years, actual proof. There's something else. Sarah hesitated. One of the names on the list is Harold Henderson, Ruth's father. Beatrice went still, completely still. For a moment, Sarah wasn't sure she was breathing. Earl knows, Sarah continued. I showed him. He's devastated. Harold. Beatrice's voice was barely a whisper. I always wondered. There were rumors. Whispers that didn't make sense. Why would a man help kill his own daughter? She shook her head slowly. But I saw how he looked at Ruth sometimes. The way he looked at her when she started dating a boy from the church. A black boy. Sarah's stomach dropped. Ruth was dating someone from the church. His name was James. James Walker. He died in the fire, too. Beatrice met Sarah's eyes. Harold Henderson wasn't trying to kill black folks. He was trying to kill the boy his daughter loved. Ruth wasn't supposed to be there that night. She was supposed to be at home, but she snuck out to see James. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Earl's father hadn't just participated in a hate crime. He had specifically targeted his own daughter's boyfriend and accidentally killed his own child in the process. Does Earl know about James? I don't know. It was kept quiet. Ruth's mother knew, I think. But she died a few years later. Grief, they said. I always thought it was shame. Shame at what her husband had done. Shame at the secret she had to keep. Sarah's mind was racing. Beatrice, I need you to tell this story. To the police. To reporters. To anyone who will listen. Child, I'm 81 years old. I've kept quiet my whole life to protect my family. My children. My grandchildren. Speaking up now could put them all in danger. Keeping quiet hasn't kept anyone safe. It's just let the danger hide. Sarah leaned forward. These families, the Pattersons, the Crawfords, whoever else is in those documents, they've been living comfortably for 60 years while your community has been suffering. They've been passing down their secrets like inheritance. Their children and grandchildren are running this town right now, and nothing will change unless someone is willing to speak the truth. Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Sarah could hear voices, car engines, the sounds of a town beginning to wake up to its own history. I'm dying, Beatrice said finally. Cancer. The doctors give me maybe 6 months. She looked at Sarah with something that might have been peace. "I've been waiting to die with this secret. Waiting to take it to my grave like everyone else did. But maybe that's not what God wants." She reached out and took Sarah's hand. "You're carrying a child. A new life. Maybe that's why He sent you here. To this house. At this time. So this baby could be born into a world where the truth finally matters." Sarah squeezed the old woman's hand. "Will you help me?" Beatrice's chin lifted. Something shifted in her eyes. The fear was still there, but something stronger rose beneath it. "Yes," she said. "I'll help you. I'll tell everything I know, and then I'll die free for the first time in my life." The afternoon brought chaos. Earl's reporter friend arrived from Atlanta, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana Ross, no relation to the singer who set up in Sarah's living room like she was establishing a command post. 2 more news vans appeared on Cedar Lane, their satellite dishes rising like mechanical flowers. Crawford tried to keep them back, but the First Amendment was stronger than yellow tape. Sarah watched through her window as the chief argued with a cameraman. His face was red. His hands were gesturing wildly. Whatever control he had hoped to maintain was slipping away. Her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered anyway. "Mrs. Mitchell." A man's voice, unfamiliar. "My name is Robert Patterson. I believe you found some items in your house that belong to my family." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Excuse me. Those materials you discovered. They were stored in that property by my grandfather many years ago. They have significant historical value to our family, and we'd like to retrieve them. They're evidence of crimes. They're not going anywhere." "Mrs. Mitchell." Patterson's voice hardened. "You're new to this town. You don't understand how things work here. Those documents contain private family information that was never meant to be public. We have lawyers, very good lawyers, and we will pursue every legal avenue to protect our family's privacy. Your grandfather helped burn down a church with people inside. 4 people died, including a 17-year-old girl." Silence on the other end. Then, "Those are unsubstantiated allegations. The fire was ruled accidental. By a fire marshal whose name might also be in those documents. I haven't finished reading them all yet." More silence. When Patterson spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more dangerous. "You have a baby coming. A child who will need to grow up in this community. Go to school here. Make friends here. Have you thought about what kind of life that child will have if you continue down this path?" Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Her baby kicked. "Are you threatening my child?" "I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences, long-term consequences, for everyone involved." Patterson paused. "Think about it, Mrs. Mitchell. Think very carefully. And then ask yourself if this is really the hill you want to die on." The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. For the first time since she had found those bundles, she felt truly afraid. Earl found her like that, standing in the middle of her living room, staring at nothing. "Sarah, what happened?" She told him, word for word. When she finished, Earl's face had gone pale beneath his weathered skin. "Robert Patterson. He's the president of the First National Bank. Half this town owes him money. The other half is afraid of him." Earl ran his hand through his hair. "He actually threatened your baby." "Not directly. He's too smart for that. But the meaning was clear. We need to tell Diana, get this on record, and say what? That a prominent citizen made some vague comments that could be interpreted as threatening. Patterson's lawyers would tear that apart." Earl started pacing. "Then we go public faster. Before they can organize. Before they can figure out how to stop us. We release everything. The documents. The photographs. Beatrice's testimony. All of it. Make it so big they can't bury it." "And what happens to me?" "To my baby Patterson is right about one thing, Earl. I have to live here. My child has to grow up here. If I make enemies of the most powerful families in town, then you'll have enemies, but you'll also have the truth." Earl stopped pacing and looked at her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "Sarah, I spent 40 years living next to this house, not knowing what was hidden inside. 40 years of wondering why my sister really died. 40 years of watching the people responsible go to church and run businesses and raise families like nothing ever happened." His voice cracked. My own father was one of them. And I never knew. I never knew because everyone was too afraid to speak. I'm not afraid to speak, Earl. I'm afraid of what happens after." "Then let me tell you what happens after." Earl moved closer. "After the truth comes out, some people will hate you. Some people will thank you. Some people will pretend they always knew, and were just waiting for someone else to say it first. The town will fight about it for years. Families will be torn apart. Old wounds will open. But Sarah, listen to me. The wounds are already there. They've been there for 60 years. They've just been covered up, hidden, like those robes in your attic. And hidden wounds don't heal. They fester. They poison everything around them." Sarah looked at this man who had become her ally in something neither of them had asked for. His eyes were wet. His voice was raw. He was carrying 60 years of grief and betrayal, and he was still standing. "Your sister," Sarah said quietly. "Ruth, tell me about her." Earl's face changed, softened. She was beautiful, smart, had a laugh that could fill up a room. She wanted to be a teacher, said she was going to change the world one classroom at a time. He smiled, but it was painful to watch. She would have too. She was that kind of person, the kind who makes you believe things can be different. And James, the boy she loved, I never met him. Didn't even know he existed until Beatrice told you today. Earl shook his head. My sister died for love. For the simple crime of loving someone my father didn't approve of. And my father lived another 30 years after that. Went to church every Sunday. Served on the town council. Died in his sleep at 72 years old, surrounded by family. Everyone saying what a good man he was. That's not justice. No, it's not. But Sarah, justice delayed is better than no justice at all. And right now, for the first time in 60 years, justice has a chance. Because of you. Because you climbed onto that roof. Because you didn't look away. The back door opened. Diana appeared. Her phone pressed to her ear, her face urgent. Sarah, Earl, we have a problem. What kind of problem? I just got a call from my editor. Someone from Willowbrook contacted the station, a lawyer. He's threatening to sue if we air anything about those documents without giving his clients a chance to respond. Patterson, Earl said. He moves fast. It gets worse. The lawyer claims those documents were stolen property, that they were removed from their rightful owners without permission decades ago and stored illegally in this house. He's arguing that Sarah has no legal right to possess them or share them with anyone. Sarah felt the walls closing in. That's insane. I bought this house. Everything in it belongs to me. That's not how they're framing it. They're saying the previous owners had no right to sell what wasn't theirs, that the documents were always family property that was being held in trust. Diana lowered her phone. It's bullshit, obviously, but it could delay us, tie us up in court for months while they figure out how to make this go away. Then we don't wait. Sarah made her decision in that moment. We go public tonight, before they can file anything, before they can stop us. Sarah, if we do that without legal cover. I don't care about legal cover. 4 people died in that church. 4 people whose families have been waiting 60 years for answers. I'm not going to let some rich lawyer delay justice again. She looked at Diana. You have Beatrice's testimony. Recorded it an hour ago. It's powerful stuff. You have photographs of the documents. Everything. Names, dates, all of it. Then run the story. Tonight. Every outlet you can reach. Make it so big that no lawyer in the world can put it back in the box. Diana stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You know what I like you, Sarah Mitchell. I really do." She raised her phone. "Let's burn this thing down." The story broke at 6 o'clock that evening. Diana's station ran it first, but within an hour it had spread to every major outlet in Georgia. By 9 o'clock it was national news. By midnight it was trending on social media with hashtags Sarah couldn't have imagined. She sat in her living room, watching the coverage on her phone, feeling like she was observing someone else's life. The images flashed past. Her house. The yellow tape. Crawford's face, tight with barely controlled rage. Mrs. Patterson, refusing to comment, her watering can, clutched like a weapon. And Beatrice. Beautiful, brave, 81-year-old Beatrice, looking straight into the camera and saying the words she had kept locked inside for 6 decades. "I was supposed to die in that fire. My best friend did die. And the men who killed her got to live their whole lives like nothing happened. But I remember. I've always remembered. And now finally someone is listening." Sarah's phone rang. She checked the caller ID. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Mrs. Mitchell." A different voice this time. Younger. Angrier. "You've made a terrible mistake." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows where you live. Someone who knows you're alone. Someone who thinks pregnant women shouldn't be stirring up trouble that doesn't concern them." The line went dead. Sarah sat very still, her hand on her belly, her baby moving inside her like a question waiting to be answered. Outside she could hear the sounds of the street. Cars. Voices. The world continuing to turn. But something had changed. Something fundamental. The truth was out, and it couldn't be taken back. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences fell from this moment, Sarah Mitchell had done what no one else in Willowbrook had been willing to do. She had remembered. She had spoken. And she had refused to be silent. Her baby kicked again, hard and insistent. Sarah closed her eyes and whispered the only words that felt true. "It's okay. Mama's got you. Whatever happens, Mama's got you." The threatening calls continued through the night. Sarah stopped answering after the 4th one, but she couldn't stop the phone from ringing. Every 20 minutes, like clockwork, like someone wanted her to know they were watching, waiting, counting the hours until they could do whatever they were planning to do. At 3 a.m. she finally called Earl. "I can't sleep," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear the phone. Every time I hear the phone, I think about what they said. I'm coming over. Earl, it's the middle of the night. And you're pregnant, and alone, and being threatened by people who burned down a church 60 years ago. I'm coming over." He arrived in 10 minutes. Sarah let him in through the back door, away from the police cars, still parked out front, away from the reporters who had set up camp on Cedar Lane despite the hour. "Have you eaten?" Earl asked. "I can't eat." "You have to eat. The baby needs food, even if you don't want it." He moved into her kitchen and started opening cabinets. "Where's your bread? Your eggs?" "Earl, I don't need you to cook for me." "Yes, you do." He found a pan and set it on the stove. "Sit down. Let me take care of something for once." Sarah sat. She watched Earl crack eggs into the pan, his movements practiced and steady. For a moment, the domesticity of it made everything feel almost normal, almost safe. "My wife used to do this," Earl said quietly. "When I couldn't sleep. She'd get up and make eggs and toast, and we'd sit at the kitchen table and talk until the sun came up." He flipped the eggs with a practiced hand. "She's been gone 8 years now. Cancer. Same thing that's taking Beatrice." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She had a good life, a long life. More than Ruth ever got." He slid the eggs onto a plate and set them in front of Sarah. "Eat." She took a bite, then another. The food hit her stomach, and she realized how hungry she actually was. "What happens now?" she asked between bites. "The story is out. Everyone knows. But knowing and doing something about it are two different things." The state attorney general called Diana an hour ago. "They're sending investigators. Real ones, not Crawford's people. Sarah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. That fast? The story's too big to ignore now. National coverage, social media pressure. Politicians are already making statements trying to get ahead of it. Earl sat down across from her. Patterson and the others, they're scrambling. Their lawyers are working overtime trying to figure out how to contain this. But it's like trying to hold water in your hands. The more they squeeze, the more it slips through. They're not going to give up. No, they're not. Which is why we need to be smart about what comes next. Sarah's phone rang again. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Her hand started to reach for it, then stopped. Don't answer, Earl said. I know. But the phone kept ringing. And ringing. And when it finally stopped, it started again almost immediately. This is psychological warfare, Sarah said. They're trying to break me. Is it working? She looked at Earl, at this man who had lost his sister 60 years ago and just learned his father was responsible. At this man who had every reason to fall apart, but was instead sitting in her kitchen at 3 a.m. making sure she ate. No, she said. It's not working. The sun rose at 6:47 a.m. Sarah knew because she watched it happen standing at her window, Earl asleep on her couch, her baby awake, and moving inside her. The light crept across Cedar Lane like a slow tide, revealing a street that had been transformed overnight. More news vans had arrived. Protesters too, though Sarah couldn't tell from this distance which side they were on. Some carried signs that said, "Justice for Ruth," and "No more secrets." Others held signs that said, "Leave our town alone," and "Fake news." Her phone buzzed. A text from Diana. State investigators arriving at 9. They want to interview you first. Can you be ready? Sarah typed back. I'll be ready. She showered, dressed, tried to make herself look like someone who hadn't been up all night receiving death threats. Her reflection in the mirror showed a tired, frightened woman, but also something else. Something harder. Something that had survived 14 moves and countless disappointments and was not going to be broken by anonymous phone calls. You look like hell, Earl said when she came downstairs. Thanks. But you look like hell who's ready to fight. That's what matters. The investigators arrived at exactly 9 a.m. Two of them. A woman named Agent Torres and a man named Agent Williams. They were federal, not state, which meant the case had already escalated beyond anything Sarah had imagined. Mrs. Mitchell, Torres said, shaking Sarah's hand. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. I didn't agree to anything. I called 911 and reported what I found. You're the ones who decided to show up. Torres almost smiled. Fair enough. Can we sit down? They sat in Sarah's living room, the same room where she had stood watching the phone ring all night. Torres had a tablet. Williams had a notepad. Both of them had expressions that gave nothing away. Walk us through it, Torres said. From the beginning. Don't leave anything out. Sarah told the story. The storm. The leak. The decision to climb onto the roof. The discovery of the hidden space. The bundles. The robes. The documents. She told them about Earl, about Beatrice, about Crawford's reaction, about Patterson's phone call. When she finished, Torres was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Mitchell, you understand that what you've uncovered is potentially one of the largest repositories of Klan documentation from this era ever found in Georgia. I understand that 4 people died in a fire and no one ever paid for it. That too. Torres leaned forward. The documents you found, they don't just relate to the 1962 church fire. They span decades, multiple incidents, multiple counties. This wasn't a local organization. This was a network. Sarah's stomach tightened. How big? We're still assessing. But some of the names in those documents, they're not just local. They're state level. Politicians, judges, law enforcement officials. Torres paused. You've opened a door, Mrs. Mitchell. A door that a lot of powerful people have been keeping closed for a very long time. Is that supposed to scare me? It's supposed to prepare you. Because what happens next is going to be difficult. For you, for this town, for everyone whose names appear in those documents. Torres stood. We're going to need to take the original materials into evidence. We'll provide you with certified copies for your records. And we're going to need you to testify when the time comes. Testify in court. Eventually, there may be charges filed, historic cases reopened, civil suits. This is going to be a long process, Mrs. Mitchell. Are you prepared for that? Sarah's hand moved to her belly. Her baby kicked against her palm. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to make sure my child grows up in a world where the truth matters. Torres nodded slowly. That's the right answer. The investigators spent 3 hours in Sarah's attic, cataloging, photographing, carefully removing the materials that had been hidden there for decades. Sarah watched them carry out box after box, each one labeled and sealed, each one containing evidence of horrors she was only beginning to understand. When they were finished, Torres found Sarah in the kitchen, where she had retreated to escape the parade of officials trampling through her house. We found something else, Torres said. In the documents, something you should know about. What? Torres hesitated. It was the first time Sarah had seen her look uncertain. There's a list, a target list. People the organization was monitoring, people they considered threats. She paused. One of the names on that list is Coleman. Beatrice Coleman. Sarah's blood went cold. Beatrice was a target. Her whole family. The documents indicate they were being watched. Notes about their movements, their routines, their vulnerabilities. Torres met Sarah's eyes. The list is dated 1962, just before the church fire. They were going to kill her too. It appears that way. Whatever stopped them, whether it was her illness that night or something else, Beatrice Coleman was supposed to die in that fire alongside Ruth Henderson. Sarah thought about the elderly woman who had sat in her kitchen telling stories she had kept secret for 60 years. Beatrice had always believed she survived by accident, by luck. But this changed everything. Does she know? Not yet. We thought you might want to tell her yourself. Sarah found Beatrice at her house, a small structure on the other side of town that looked almost as tired as its owner. The old woman answered the door slowly, her face lighting up when she saw who it was. Sarah, come in, come in. I've been watching the news. You're famous now. I'm not famous. I'm just the woman who found something that should have been found a long time ago. They sat in Beatrice's living room, surrounded by photographs of family members spanning generations. Sarah saw faces that looked like Beatrice's eyes that held the same quiet strength. Beatrice, the investigators found something about you, about what happened in 1962. The old woman's face grew still. What did they find? Sarah told her. About the target list, about the surveillance, about the fact that Beatrice had been marked for death along with Ruth and the others. When she finished, Beatrice was silent for a long time. Then she began to cry. Not the gentle tears of grief, but deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body. I always thought God saved me. She gasped between sobs. I thought He had a purpose for me, something important I was supposed to do. She looked at Sarah with eyes that had suddenly aged 20 years. But there was no purpose, no divine plan. I just got sick, random, meaningless, and they were going to kill me anyway. They were going to kill me and my whole family. Sarah moved to sit beside her. She took Beatrice's hand in both of hers. You survived. That's what matters. You survived, and 60 years later, you told the truth. You helped me understand what happened. You helped me find justice for Ruth and the others. Sarah squeezed her hand. Maybe that was the purpose. Maybe you survived so you could be here now when someone finally needed to hear your story. Beatrice wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. You really believe that? I don't know what I believe, but I know that your testimony is going to help put people in prison. I know that families are finally going to get answers they've been waiting decades for. I know that because of you, the truth is finally coming out." Sarah paused. "That has to mean something." Beatrice looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You're a good woman, Sarah Mitchell. This town doesn't deserve you." "Maybe not, but I'm here anyway." The drive back to Cedar Lane took 15 minutes. Sarah used the time to think, to process, to try to make sense of everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. She had come to Willowbrook looking for a home. She had found something else entirely. A history, a burden, a responsibility she had never asked for but could not put down. Her phone rang. "Lisa." "Are you okay? I've been watching the news. It's everywhere." "I'm okay. Tired. But okay." "Sarah, they're showing pictures of your house, your address. Anyone can find you." "I know. That doesn't scare you." Sarah thought about the threatening phone calls, about Patterson's veiled warnings, about the target list that had included Beatrice Coleman and would have included her if she had existed in 1962. "It terrifies me," she admitted. "But I can't stop now, not when we're this close." Close to what, Justice Sarah? Those people have been getting away with murder for 60 years. They have money. They have lawyers. They have connections in every institution that matters. What makes you think this time will be different? Because this time everyone is watching. The whole country. Maybe the whole world. They can't make this go away quietly. They can't burn down a church and rule it an accident. They can't threaten a family into silence. Sarah took a breath. "They can try to stop me, Lisa, but they can't stop the truth. Not anymore." She pulled onto Cedar Lane and immediately knew something was wrong. The police cars were gone. The news vans were still there, but they were pointed at something other than her house. People were running, shouting. Sarah parked and got out, her heart racing. "What happened?" she asked the first person she reached. "What's going on?" The woman turned to look at her. Her face was pale. "The Henderson house," she said. "Someone set it on fire." Sarah ran. 7 months pregnant, her belly heavy, her breath short, she ran down Cedar Lane toward Earl's house. She could see it now. Smoke rising. Orange light flickering. The sound of sirens approaching from somewhere behind her. "Earl!" She screamed his name. "Earl!" Someone grabbed her arm. A firefighter, his face covered in soot. "Ma'am, you can't go any closer. It's not safe." "My friend is in there, Earl Henderson. Is he okay? Did he get out?" The firefighter's expression changed, softened with something that looked like pity. "Ma'am, I need you to stay back. We're doing everything we can." "No." Sarah tried to pull away. "No, you don't understand. I need to know if he's okay. I need to see him." "Sarah." She turned. Earl was standing behind her, his face covered in ash, his clothes singed but alive, alive. She threw her arms around him without thinking, held him like she had known him her whole life instead of just a few weeks. "I thought you were dead. I thought they killed you." "Almost did." Earl's voice was hoarse. "I was in the back when it started. Smelled smoke. Got out through the bathroom window." He pulled back to look at her. "Sarah, this wasn't an accident. I saw someone running from the house right before the flames started. They're escalating." "Did you see who it was?" "No. Too dark. Too fast." Earl's hands were shaking. "But I know who sent them. Same people who've been calling you. Same people who killed my sister. They're trying to finish what they started." Diana appeared beside them, her phone already recording. "Earl, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. On camera." "Diana, his house just burned down. Give him a minute." "There is no minute, Sarah. Every second we wait is a second they use to spin this. To make it look like an accident. To control the narrative." Diana thrust the phone toward Earl. "Tell the world what they did, right now, while the evidence is still burning." Earl looked at Sarah. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the grief, the rage. "Do it," she said. "Tell them everything. Earl turned to the camera. His voice was steady despite everything. "My name is Earl Henderson. 60 years ago, members of the Ku Klux Klan burned down a church in this town and killed 4 people, including my sister Ruth. My own father was one of the men responsible. I didn't know until 2 days ago when Sarah Mitchell found the evidence that had been hidden in the house next door to mine." He paused. "Tonight, someone tried to burn down my house with me inside. They failed. I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." The video was online within minutes. By midnight, it had been viewed 3 million times, but the night wasn't over yet. At 2 a.m., Sarah's phone rang again. Different number this time. She answered before she could stop herself. "Mrs. Mitchell." A woman's voice, older, trembling. "My name is Margaret Crawford, William Crawford's mother. I need to speak with you." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "Your son threatened me." "I know. And I know what he's capable of. That's why I'm calling." Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. "There are things about my family that I've kept secret for 70 years. Things that could destroy everything my son has built. Things that could change everything you think you know about what happened in 1962. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm 89 years old. Because I have pancreatic cancer. Because I've spent my whole life protecting men who didn't deserve protection." Margaret paused. "And because when I saw that pregnant woman on the news, that brave young woman standing up to my son and his friends, I realized something. I realized I was tired. Tired of lies. Tired of secrets. Tired of being complicit in evil." Sarah's heart was pounding. "What do you know, Mrs. Crawford?" "Not over the phone. Come to my house. Tomorrow morning. Early before William wakes up. I'll tell you everything." Another pause. "And Sarah, bring a camera. I want the world to see what I have to say." The line went dead. Sarah stood in her kitchen, phone in hand, her baby kicking inside her like a drum. Outside, she could still see the smoke rising from Earl's burned house. The firefighters were gone now, but the destruction remained. A warning. A threat. A reminder of what the people in power were willing to do to protect their secrets. But now one of their own wanted to talk. Margaret Crawford, the matriarch, the keeper of secrets, the mother of the man who had threatened Sarah's unborn child. Tomorrow morning, everything could change again. Sarah walked to her window and looked out at the street where her life had been transformed. Somewhere out there in the darkness, people were watching, waiting, planning their next move. But so was she. She picked up her phone and called Earl. "Can't sleep either," he answered. "Crawford's mother just called me. She wants to meet. She says she knows things that could change everything." Silence on the other end. Then, "Margaret Crawford. I remember her from when I was a boy. She was young then, beautiful, married to the man who helped kill my sister." Earl's voice hardened. "What does she want? To tell the truth. Or so she says. And you believe her?" Sarah thought about the woman's voice, the trembling, the weariness, the strange certainty that had come through even over the phone. "I think she's dying," Sarah said. "I think she's looking at the end of her life and realizing she doesn't want to meet her maker with all that blood on her hands. Or she's setting a trap. Maybe. But I have to find out." Sarah touched her belly. "Earl, if she knows something that can end this, something that can put these people away for good, I have to hear it, even if it's dangerous." "Then I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. My sister died because people kept secrets. I'm not going to let you walk into that woman's house alone just because I was too scared to come with you." Sarah smiled despite everything. "Thank you, Earl." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over, if we're both still alive." She hung up and looked out the window one more time. The smoke had cleared now. The street was quiet. But Sarah knew the quiet was temporary, a pause before the next storm. Tomorrow she would walk into the home of her enemy and hope to find an ally. Tomorrow, Margaret Crawford would either help her end this or help her enemies bury her. Either way, by this time, tomorrow nothing would be the same. Sarah placed both hands on her belly and felt her baby moving inside her. Strong, determined, ready to be born into whatever world Sarah managed to create. "Hold on, little one," she whispered. "Mama's almost done fighting. Just a little longer. Just a little more." The morning came too fast. Sarah had managed maybe 2 hours of sleep, her mind racing with everything Margaret Crawford might tell her, everything that could go wrong. At 5:47 a.m., she gave up trying to rest and got out of bed. Earl was already waiting in her driveway when she stepped outside at 6:15. His face was haggard, his clothes borrowed from somewhere since everything he owned had burned. But his eyes were sharp alert, ready for whatever was coming. "You sure about this?" he asked as Sarah climbed into his truck. "No, but I'm going anyway." They drove through Willowbrook in the gray light of early morning. The streets were empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers who turned to stare as they passed. Everyone in town knew Earl's truck by now. Everyone knew what it meant when they saw it moving through the streets. "Margaret Crawford lives on Oak Hill," Earl said. "Big house. Been in the family for 4 generations. Her husband built it after the war. World War II, I mean. Before everything happened." "You know her?" "I knew of her. Everyone did. She was the queen of Willowbrook Society for decades. Charity events, church committees, garden clubs, the whole performance." Earl's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Her husband was one of the founding members of the local chapter. I didn't know that until you found those documents. But looking back, it makes sense. He was always at the center of everything. Always the one people turned to when they needed something done quietly. And she knew. She must have. You don't stay married to a man for 50 years without knowing who he really is." The Crawford house appeared at the end of a long driveway. Earl stopped the truck at the entrance and killed the engine. "Last chance to turn back," he said. Sarah opened her door. "I didn't come this far to turn back." Margaret Crawford was waiting at the front door when they reached it. She was small, frail, her white hair thin and carefully styled. But her eyes were sharp, intelligent, watching Sarah with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for coming." Margaret's voice was soft but steady. "And Mr. Henderson, I wasn't expecting you." "Sarah doesn't go anywhere alone. Not anymore." Margaret nodded slowly. "I understand. Please come in. We don't have much time. William usually wakes at 7. They followed her inside. Sarah had expected something grand, something that matched the family's reputation. Instead, the house felt tired, worn, like Margaret herself. "Sit," Margaret said, gesturing to a pair of chairs. "Would you like coffee, tea?" "We didn't come for refreshments," Earl said. "We came for answers." Margaret lowered herself into a chair across from them. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small key. "This opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box 147. Inside you'll find everything you need." Sarah stared at the key. "What's in the box?" "My husband's private records. The ones he kept separate from the organization. Names, dates, financial transactions. Proof of who funded the Klan's activities in this region for 3 decades. Margaret's voice grew quieter. "Proof that goes all the way to the state capitol." Earl leaned forward. "Why are you doing this? Why now?" "Because I'm dying, Mr. Henderson. Same cancer that took my husband. Same cancer that's taking Beatrice Coleman." Margaret smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "God has a sense of humor, doesn't he? Taking us all the same way, the victims and the perpetrators." "You're not a perpetrator. I'm a coward, which is worse." Margaret looked at Sarah with eyes that held decades of guilt. "I knew what my husband was doing. I knew about the meetings, the plans, the violence. I knew about the church fire before it happened. George came home that night smelling like smoke and I pretended I didn't notice. I pretended for 60 years. Sarah felt sick. "You could have stopped it. You could have warned someone." "Could I? I was a woman in 1962, Mrs. Mitchell. I had no money of my own. No power, no voice. My husband controlled everything, including me. Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation. I should have found a way. I should have been braver. But I wasn't. And 4 people died because of my silence. 5, Earl said. Ruth was one of 4. James Walker. Mary Thompson and her 2 children. 5 people. Margaret flinched as if he had struck her. Yes, 5. I know their names. I've said their names every night for 60 years, asking God to forgive me. And what did God say? Nothing. He never says anything. That's how I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Sarah took the key from Margaret's outstretched hand. It was small, ordinary nothing to indicate the power it held. Why give this to me? Why not take it to the authorities yourself? Because I tried that once. 30 years ago. When my husband was dying, I told him I was going to tell the truth. He laughed at me. Said even if I talked, no one would believe me. Said the people in those records were too powerful, too connected. Margaret's voice hardened. He was right. I went to the sheriff's office the day after he died. Told them I had evidence of crimes. They listened politely, wrote some notes, and then nothing happened. A week later, someone broke into my house and searched everything. They didn't find the safety deposit box, but the message was clear. Who was the sheriff then? Robert Crawford, William's father, George's best friend. Margaret laughed bitterly. You see the problem. The people who should investigate are the same people who committed the crimes, or their children, or their grandchildren. It never ends. It just passes down generation to generation like an inheritance of evil. The sound of a car door slamming made all 3 of them freeze. William. Margaret's face went white. He's early. You have to go. Now. We haven't finished talking. There's nothing left to say. You have the key. You have everything you need. Margaret was already moving toward the back of the house. There's a door through the kitchen. Go. Quickly. Sarah grabbed Earl's arm and they ran. Through the kitchen, out the back door, around the side of the house. They reached Earl's truck just as William Crawford was walking up the front steps. Drive, Sarah said. Drive now. Earl started the engine and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, Sarah saw Crawford turn to watch them go. Even from this distance, she could see the anger on his face. He saw us, she said. I know. He's going to know his mother talked. I know. Sarah looked at the key in her hand. Such a small thing, such enormous power. We need to get to that bank before Crawford has a chance to do anything. Earl checked his watch. Bank doesn't open until 9. We've got 2 hours. Then we wait. They parked across the street from First National Bank at 7:45 a.m. Sarah watched the building like it might disappear if she looked away. Inside that building was a box. Inside that box was evidence that could bring down some of the most powerful families in Georgia. At 8:30, her phone rang. Diana. Sarah, where are you? I've been calling all morning. I'm about to do something that's either going to end this or get me killed. What? Sarah, talk to me. Sarah told her about Margaret Crawford, about the key, about the safety deposit box. My God, Diana breathed. Sarah, do you understand what this means? If Margaret's telling the truth, this goes way beyond Willowbrook. This is statewide. This could bring down politicians, judges, law enforcement officials. I know. You need protection. Real protection. Not local cops, federal marshals. There's no time for that. Crawford saw us leaving his mother's house. He's probably already making calls trying to figure out how to stop this. Sarah looked at the bank. The moment those doors open, I'm going inside, and I'm not coming out until I have what's in that box. Then I'm coming to you. Right now. I'll bring a camera crew. If anything happens, it happens on live television. Diana, you don't have to. Yes, I do. This is the biggest story of my career. Maybe the biggest story anyone's ever broken in this state. I'm not missing it. Diana paused. And Sarah, you're not alone anymore. Remember that. Whatever happens next, you're not alone." The bank doors opened at exactly 9 a.m. Sarah was the first person through them, Earl right behind her, Diana and her camera crew arriving just as they entered. The lobby was quiet, normal. A few tellers behind the counter, a security guard by the door. Nothing to indicate that history was about to be made. Sarah walked to the nearest teller. "I need to access safety deposit box 147. The teller looked at her with polite confusion. "Do you have authorization, ma'am?" Sarah held up the key. "I have this." "I'm sorry, but I'll need to see identification and verify that you're on the authorized access list." Sarah's heart sank. She hadn't thought about this. Margaret had given her the key, but that didn't mean the bank would let her open the box. "Can you check the list?" "My name is Sarah Mitchell." The teller typed something into her computer. Her eyebrows rose. "Actually, ma'am, your name was added to the access list yesterday evening. Margaret Crawford authorized you personally." The teller smiled. "Right this way, please." Sarah followed her toward the back of the bank, her mind racing. Margaret had known. She had planned this. She had added Sarah's name before even making the phone call, ensuring that nothing could stop the truth from coming out. The safety deposit room was small, lined with metal boxes of various sizes. The teller led Sarah to box 147, used her own key in combination with Sarah's, and pulled out a long metal container. "Take as long as you need," she said. "Just press the button on the wall when you're finished." She left. Sarah was alone with the box. Her hands were shaking as she lifted the lid. Inside were documents, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. Financial records, meeting minutes, photographs, letters with signatures from names she recognized from the news, from history books, from the buildings in downtown Atlanta. But that wasn't what made her gasp. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in cloth, was a small leather journal. She opened it to the first page and felt the blood drain from her face. The handwriting was meticulous, dated, detailed. And it told a story that was even worse than anything she had imagined. George Crawford hadn't just been a member of the Klan. He had been the regional coordinator. The one who decided which churches to burn, which families to terrorize, which activists to eliminate. He had kept records of every operation, every payment, every name involved. And one of those operations was listed in sickening detail. March 29, 1962. Miller Road Church. Target, James Walker. Secondary targets. Anyone present. Authorized by State Committee. Funded by First National Bank. The same bank she was standing in. The same bank that was now run by Robert Patterson. The same bank that had been laundering money for the Klan for decades. Sarah sat down heavily, the journal in her hands, the weight of history pressing down on her. "Mrs. Mitchell." The teller's voice came through the intercom. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, I'm fine. I just need a few more minutes." She wasn't fine. She would never be fine. But she had what she needed. She gathered everything from the box, placed it carefully in the bag she had brought, and pressed the button on the wall. The teller met her at the door. Behind her, Sarah could see Earl pacing in the lobby, Diana filming everything, the security guard talking urgently into his radio. "Thank you for your help," Sarah said. "Of course, ma'am. Have a good day." Sarah walked toward the lobby. 20 feet. 15. 10. The front doors burst open. William Crawford strode in, flanked by 2 deputies. His face was red with fury. "Sarah Mitchell, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Sarah stopped walking. Her hand moved to her belly. "I haven't stolen anything. I had authorized access to that box." "My mother is suffering from dementia. Any authorization she gave is invalid." Crawford moved closer. "Hand over the bag, now." "No." That wasn't a request. Diana stepped forward, her camera pointed directly at Crawford's face. "Chief Crawford, can you explain why you're attempting to confiscate evidence related to the 1962 church fire evidence that reportedly contains financial records implicating First National Bank in funding domestic terrorism?" Crawford's face went pale, then red again. Turn that camera off. I'm a journalist. I don't take orders from you. You're interfering with a police investigation. What investigation? You just arrested a pregnant woman for accessing a safety deposit box she was legally authorized to open. Diana's voice was sharp-cutting. This is being broadcast live, Chief Crawford. Every word you say is going out to millions of viewers. Would you like to explain your actions? Crawford looked at the camera, at Sarah, at the bag in her hands. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Earl stepped forward. William Crawford, I've known you since you were a boy. I watched you grow up. I watched you become police chief. And I always wondered whether you knew what your family had done. Earl's voice was steady, measured. Now I know. You've known all along, and you've spent your whole life protecting your grandfather's legacy. You don't know what you're talking about. I know my sister died in that fire. I know your grandfather helped plan it. I know your father covered it up. And I know you've been doing the same thing ever since you put on that badge. Earl moved closer. But it ends today. Right here. Right now. Earl Henderson, if you take one more step, I'll arrest you too. Then arrest me. Arrest all of us. Do whatever you have to do. Earl's voice rose. But understand this. Whatever happens to us, the truth is already out. It's on film. It's being broadcast around the world. You can't stop it anymore. You can only decide how you want to be remembered. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Crawford's radio crackled. Chief, we've got a problem. There are federal vehicles approaching. Multiple units. They're surrounding the bank. Crawford's face changed. The rage drained away, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Federal FBI, sir, and they're asking for you by name. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a tightening, a pressure that she had been ignoring for hours. The documents, she said, her voice strained. They mention FBI agents who were on the Klan payroll in the 60s, people who helped cover up investigations, people who made evidence disappear. Crawford stared at her. How do you know that? Because I read them. All of them. And I know that one of those agents has a son who's currently serving in the FBI Atlanta field office. Sarah took a breath, fighting against the pain that was building in her abdomen. But there's something else those documents reveal. Something I haven't told anyone yet. What? Sarah looked at Crawford with eyes that held no fear anymore. Only determination. The 1962 church fire wasn't the only murder your family committed. According to your grandfather's journal, there were 17 others, spread across 30 years, all of them made to look like accidents or suicides or disappearances. She paused. One of them was a federal prosecutor who was investigating the Klan's activities in Georgia. He died in a car accident in 1971. Your grandfather wrote about it in detail, including the name of the FBI agent who helped make it happen. Crawford's face had gone gray. You're lying. I'm not. And the FBI knows I'm not. Because I sent them photographs of the journal before I even walked into this bank. They've been waiting for this moment. Waiting to see what you would do. Sarah smiled grimly. You failed the test, Chief Crawford. Spectacularly. The front doors opened again. This time it was federal agents. 6 of them. Led by a woman in a dark suit who moved with the confidence of someone who had been waiting a long time for this day. William Crawford. The woman held up her badge. I'm Special Agent Torres. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to commit civil rights violations. You have the right to remain an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Crawford didn't resist as they handcuffed him. He just stared at Sarah with eyes that held something beyond hatred, something broken. This isn't over, he said quietly as they led him away. You have no idea what you've started. Yes, I do, Sarah replied. I've started the end. The pain hit her then. Real pain. Sharp and undeniable. Earl. Her voice came out strangled. Earl, something's wrong. Earl was at her side instantly. What is it? What's happening? The baby. Sarah grabbed his arm as another wave of pain crashed through her. I think the baby's coming. Diana's camera was still rolling, capturing everything. The arrest, the aftermath, and now the pregnant woman who had just brought down a dynasty going into labor on the floor of the bank she had helped expose. Call an ambulance, Earl shouted. Someone call an ambulance. Sarah sank to the floor, her back against the cool marble, her hands clutching her belly. The bag of documents lay beside her, evidence of 60 years of crimes, while inside her, a new life was demanding to be born. It's too early, she gasped. I'm only 33 weeks. It's too early. Babies come when they want to come. Earl knelt beside her, holding her hand. Just breathe. Help is coming. The documents. Don't let anyone take the documents. I've got them. I've got everything. Just focus on you. Focus on the baby. Another contraction hit. Sarah screamed. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. Paramedics rushed in, assessed her, loaded her onto a stretcher. Through it all, Sarah kept her eyes on Earl, on the bag he held, on the evidence that had cost so much and meant so much. Come with me, she said as they wheeled her toward the door. Please, I don't want to be alone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and fear and the wailing of sirens. Sarah held Earl's hand so tight she thought she might break his fingers, but he never complained. He just kept talking, kept reminding her to breathe, kept telling her that everything was going to be okay. I did it, she said between contractions. I actually did it. You did more than anyone could have asked. Ruth would be proud, your sister. She would be proud of what we did. Earl's eyes filled with tears. Yeah, I think she would. They reached the hospital at 11:47 a.m. Sarah was rushed into the delivery room, surrounded by doctors and nurses who moved with urgent efficiency. Earl was pushed to the side, told to wait, told that someone would update him when there was news. He sat in the waiting room, the bag of documents at his feet, and prayed for the first time in 40 years. At 3:23 p.m., a nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Henderson, you can come in now. He followed her down the corridor, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. The nurse stopped at a door, smiled, and pushed it open. Sarah was lying in bed, exhausted but alive, her face glowing with something that looked like peace. And in her arms, wrapped in a pink blanket, was the smallest, most perfect human being Earl had ever seen. It's a girl, Sarah said, her voice hoarse but happy. 5 pounds 3 ounces, small but strong. The doctors say she's going to be fine. Earl moved closer, looking at the tiny face, the closed eyes, the miniature fingers that curled and uncurled with the rhythm of sleep. She's beautiful, he said. What are you going to name her? Sarah looked at him, then at the baby, then back at him. Ruth, she said. Her name is Ruth. Earl couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He just stood there, tears streaming down his face, looking at the child who would carry his sister's name into a future that finally held hope. Thank you, he finally managed. Sarah, thank you. Thank you, she replied. For everything, for being there, for believing me, for not letting me face this alone. The door opened. Diana appeared, her phone already out. The story's everywhere, she said. Crawford's been charged. Patterson's been arrested. The governor is calling for a full investigation. 3 other police chiefs in neighboring counties have resigned. She paused. You did it, Sarah. You actually did it. Sarah looked at her daughter, at Earl, at the future that had seemed so impossible just days ago. We did it, she said. Together. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Saw the news. Saw everything. I'm on my way. I love you. Sarah smiled and closed her eyes. In her arms, baby Ruth stirred, yawned, and settled back into sleep. Outside the window, the sun was setting over Willowbrook, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A new day was ending. And somewhere in a safety deposit box that no longer held any secrets, the ghosts of the past were finally resting. But Sarah knew this wasn't really the end. It was just the beginning. 1 year later, Sarah stood in her front yard watching Ruth take her first unsteady steps across the grass. The morning sun was warm on her face, and somewhere down the street a neighbor was mowing their lawn. The sound was ordinary, normal, the kind of thing she had stopped noticing months ago. "That's it, baby girl." Sarah crouched down, her arms open wide. "Come to Mama. You can do it." Ruth wobbled, her tiny hands reaching for balance, her face scrunched with concentration. 1 step, 2, 3. Then she fell, landing on her bottom in the soft grass, looking up at Sarah with an expression of pure surprise. "You almost had it." Sarah scooped her up, kissing her cheek. "We'll try again tomorrow." "She's got your stubbornness." Earl's voice came from behind her. He was standing on the porch, coffee in hand, watching them with something that looked like peace. "That girl is going to move mountains when she grows up." "She already has." Sarah carried Ruth toward the house. "Just by being born." A lot had changed in 12 months. The house on Cedar Lane looked different now. Sarah had painted it herself, a soft blue that caught the light in the early morning. The porch no longer sagged. The roof was new, properly installed by professionals this time. Even the yard had transformed, dotted with flowers that bloomed in colors her grandmother would have recognized. But the biggest changes weren't visible from the outside. "Diana called," Earl said as Sarah climbed the steps. "She wants to do a follow-up piece, 1-year anniversary of the discovery." "I know. She's asked 3 times this week." "You going to do it?" Sarah looked at her daughter, at this tiny person who had been born into the middle of a storm and had somehow brought calm in her wake. "Maybe. I'm tired of being on camera. But people need to remember. They need to know what happened here." The trials had dominated the news for months. William Crawford was convicted of obstruction of justice and sentenced to 15 years. Robert Patterson got 20 for money laundering and conspiracy. 6 other men from prominent Willowbrook families received sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years depending on their involvement. But the biggest shock had come 3 months ago, when the federal investigation expanded beyond Georgia. "Did you see the news this morning?" Earl asked. "They arrested another one, state senator from Alabama. His father's name was in George Crawford's journal." "I saw." Sarah settled Ruth on her hip. "Sometimes I wonder if it will ever end. Every week there's someone new, someone else connected to those documents." "Maybe it won't end. Maybe that's okay." Earl opened the door for her. "The truth has a way of spreading. You started something, Sarah. You can't control where it goes." Inside, the house smelled like coffee and the lavender candles Sarah had started burning after Ruth was born. The living room had been transformed into a play area, toys scattered across floors that no longer dipped and creaked. Photos lined the walls, new ones mixed with old. Ruth's baby pictures next to the portrait of Ruth Henderson that Earl had given Sarah on the day they named the baby. "She would have loved this," Earl said, looking at the portrait. "My sister. Seeing her name carried on. Seeing the truth finally told." "I think about her a lot." Sarah set Ruth down in her playpen. "About James, too. About Mary Thompson and her children. About all the people whose names are finally being spoken out loud." The memorial had been unveiled 6 months ago. A simple stone marker at the site where Miller Road Church once stood. 5 names carved into granite. 5 lives that had been stolen and forgotten and were now remembered. Sarah had spoken at the dedication ceremony. She hadn't wanted to, had fought against it until Earl and Diana and Lisa had convinced her that her voice mattered, that she had earned the right to speak. "I didn't come to Willowbrook looking for history," she had told the crowd gathered around the memorial. "I came looking for a home, a place to raise my daughter, a place to feel safe." She had paused, looking at the names carved in stone. "What I found instead was a wound that had been hidden for 60 years. A wound that was poisoning everything around it, even though most people didn't know it was there. Beatrice Coleman had been in the front row that day. She was in a wheelchair by then, the cancer having progressed faster than anyone expected. But her eyes were bright, her face peaceful. "You did it," Beatrice had whispered when Sarah came to hug her after the ceremony. "You did what I was too afraid to do my whole life. We did it together. All of us." Beatrice had died 2 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by family who no longer had to carry secrets. Her funeral had drawn hundreds of people, black and white, young and old, united in grief and gratitude for a woman who had finally told her truth. "Mrs. Patterson is moving." Earl's voice broke into Sarah's thoughts. "Saw the moving truck this morning." Sarah looked up from where she was organizing Ruth's toys. "Where is she going?" "Florida. Her daughter's place. She can't handle the stairs anymore. The whispers." Earl shook his head. 60 years she lived across the street from this house. 60 years she knew what her husband's family had done. And now she's running. I don't feel sorry for her. Neither do I, but I don't hate her either. Earl sat down heavily. I spent 40 years hating people I didn't even know. Hating the shadows. The faceless monsters who killed my sister. But now I know who they were. I know their names. I've seen their grandchildren testify against them in court. He paused. And somehow knowing makes it easier to let go. Sarah thought about that. About hate and forgiveness and the complicated space between them. "I'm not ready to let go," she said finally. "Not completely. Maybe I never will be." "That's okay too. You've got time. Ruth's got time. The whole world's got time now because you gave it to them." The phone rang. Sarah checked the caller ID. Unknown number. Her stomach still tightened every time she saw that, even after all these months. The threatening calls had stopped after Crawford's arrest, but the fear hadn't entirely faded. She answered anyway. "Hello? Mrs. Mitchell. This is Agent Torres. Do you have a moment?" Sarah relaxed slightly. Torres had become something like an ally over the past year. The FBI agent had checked in regularly, updating Sarah on the investigation, making sure she felt safe. "Of course. What's going on?" "We found something new. In the Crawford archives. Something that wasn't in the safety deposit box." Torres paused. "It's about your house specifically, about why it was chosen." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" The house on Cedar Lane wasn't just a storage location. It was a headquarters. The central coordinating point for Klan activities in 3 counties. Meetings were held there regularly for over 30 years. Torres's voice grew more serious. "But that's not the important part. The important part is who built the hidden space in the roof." "Who?" "A man named Thomas Walker. A black carpenter who did work for wealthy white families in the area. He was hired to do repairs on the house in 1958. 4 years before the church fire." Sarah's mind raced. Walker. Like James Walker. The boy Ruth Henderson was dating. His father. Thomas Walker was James Walker's father. Torres let that sink in. "We believe Thomas discovered what the house was being used for, and instead of exposing it directly, which would have gotten him killed, he created the hidden space. A secret archive. A place to store evidence that might someday be found. He was collecting evidence against them." "We think so. The way the space was constructed, it wasn't designed by the Klan. It was designed to trap them, to preserve their secrets until someone could bring them to light." Torres's voice softened. "Thomas Walker died in 1961, a year before the church fire. Heart attack officially. But given what we know now, we have our doubts." Sarah sat down slowly, her legs suddenly weak. "James Walker's father built the space that would eventually expose his son's murderers." "Yes. And we believe Thomas knew the risk he was taking. He knew that if the Klan discovered what he was doing, they would kill him. But he did it anyway." Torres paused. He did it for the same reason you climbed onto that roof, Mrs. Mitchell. Because some truths are worth dying for. After the call ended, Sarah sat in silence for a long time. Earl watched her from across the room waiting. "Thomas Walker," she finally said. "James's father. He built the hiding space. He knew what he was doing." Earl's face changed. He set a trap. A trap that took 60 years to spring. Sarah looked at her hands, the same hands that had pulled those bundles from the darkness. He died a year before the fire. He never got to see his son grow up, never got to see justice. But he made justice possible. Earl's voice was thick. Without that space, there would have been no evidence, no documents, no proof. Everything would have burned with the church or been destroyed over time. He shook his head slowly. Thomas Walker is the hero of this story, and nobody even knew his name until now. We need to tell people. We need to make sure he's remembered. We will. Earl stood up. We'll add his name to the memorial. We'll tell his story. We'll make sure that everyone who knows about Ruth Henderson and James Walker and the Thompson family also knows about the man who made it possible for the truth to survive. Ruth started fussing in her playpen. Sarah picked her up, holding her close, feeling the small heartbeat against her chest. "Your namesake had a brave father," she whispered to the baby. "And you have a brave family too. Uncle Earl, Aunt Lisa, all the people who stood up when it mattered." "She's got a brave mother," Earl added. "That's the most important thing." The doorbell rang. Sarah tensed automatically, then relaxed when she saw Diana's face through the window. "The reporter cometh," Earl said dryly. Diana burst through the door with her usual energy. "Sarah, Earl, you need to see this, right now." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Very right." Diana was grinning, her phone already out. "Remember the journal entries about the federal prosecutor, the one who died in 1971? The car accident that wasn't an accident." His daughter just came forward. She's been keeping her own records for 50 years, collecting evidence about her father's death, and she has something we don't have. Diana's grin widened. She has photographs. Actual photographs of the men who killed him, including the FBI agent who helped cover it up. Sarah stared at her. How is that possible? Her father was paranoid, rightfully so it turns out. He had cameras installed in his car, hidden cameras, cutting-edge technology for 1971. The cameras survived the crash. The daughter recovered them before the FBI arrived. She's been holding on to those images for 5 decades, waiting for the right moment. Why now? Because of you. Diana showed Sarah her phone. On the screen was an older woman, white-haired and dignified, speaking into a camera. Her name is Eleanor Simmons, and this is what she said this morning. Sarah pressed play. For 50 years I've been carrying my father's murder like a stone in my chest. I've watched the men responsible live their lives, build their careers, raise their families. I've watched them grow old and respected while my father rotted in his grave. Eleanor's voice was steady, but fierce. I kept quiet because I was afraid, because I knew what they were capable of, because I didn't think anyone would believe me or care or do anything about it. The video continued. But then I saw Sarah Mitchell on the news, a pregnant black woman in a small Georgia town standing up against the same evil that killed my father. Alone, terrified, and refusing to back down. Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears. If she could be that brave after everything they did to her, then I could be brave too. I could finally tell the truth. For my father. For Ruth Henderson and James Walker and all the others. For everyone who was silenced by fear. The video ended. Sarah realized she was crying. She's releasing the photographs this afternoon, Diana said, along with 50 years of documentation. Names, dates, connections. It's going to blow the whole thing wide open again. How many more? Sarah whispered. How many more people are out there holding on to secrets, waiting for someone to give them permission to speak? I don't know, But they're watching you, Sarah. They've been watching you all along. And every time you refuse to be silent, you give them courage. The afternoon brought a flood of activity. Diana set up in Sarah's living room for the anniversary interview, her crew transforming the space into a makeshift studio. Lisa arrived from Atlanta, having driven through the night when she heard about Eleanor Simmons. "This is insane," Lisa said, hugging Sarah tight. "A year ago, you were just trying to fix a leaky roof. Now you're the face of a national reckoning." "I didn't ask for that. Nobody asks for the things that matter most. They just happen, and you deal with them." Lisa pulled back to look at her sister. "I'm proud of you. I know I was scared at first. I know I told you to run. But you were right to stay. You were right about all of it." Earl appeared with Ruth in his arms. The baby was reaching for Lisa, recognizing her aunt from the many video calls they had shared. "Hello, beautiful girl." Lisa took Ruth, bouncing her gently. "You look more like your mama every day." "She's got Sarah's stubbornness," Earl said, "and her courage." Lisa kissed Ruth's forehead. "This little girl is going to grow up knowing exactly who she is and where she comes from. That's worth everything." The interview started at 4 p.m. Diana sat across from Sarah, the camera rolling, the world watching. "1 year ago, you discovered something hidden in your roof that would change the history of this town. Looking back, what do you remember most about that day?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I remember being afraid. More afraid than I'd ever been in my life. I was 7 months pregnant alone, holding Klan robes in my hands, realizing that the house I'd bought to protect my daughter had been a headquarters for terrorism for 30 years. She paused. "But I also remember something else. I remember making a choice. I could have sealed that roof back up and pretended I never saw anything. I could have walked away. But I didn't. Because my daughter was going to be born into this world, and I wanted it to be a better world than the one I grew up in. You've faced threats, harassment, attempts to silence you. Was it worth it?" Sarah looked at Earl standing just off camera with Ruth in his arms. "My daughter's middle name is Henderson. After Ruth Henderson, the girl who died in the church fire, and after Earl Henderson, the man who helped me survive this past year." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "A week ago, Earl and I took baby Ruth to the memorial at Miller Road. We stood there with the names of the dead carved in stone behind us, and Earl told my daughter about his sister, about how she laughed, about how she dreamed, about how she loved a boy named James Walker and died for that love." Sarah leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "My daughter will grow up knowing that story. She'll know about Ruth and James and the Thompson family. She'll know about Thomas Walker, who built a trap that took 60 years to spring. She'll know about Beatrice Coleman, who carried the truth in her heart, until she finally found someone to carry it forward." Sarah's voice cracked but held. "And she'll know that her mother climbed onto a broken roof while 7 months pregnant and refused to look away from what she found." Do you have a message for the people watching, for the families still hurting, for the communities still struggling with these histories? Sarah took a breath. The truth doesn't care how long you bury it. It doesn't care how powerful you are, or how many lawyers you hire, or how many threats you make. The truth waits. It waits in hidden spaces, and old documents, and the memories of people who refuse to forget. She paused. "My message is simple. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to dig into dark places. Don't be afraid to speak, even when powerful people tell you to stay silent, because the truth needs you. It needs all of us, and it's been waiting long enough." The interview ended at 5:30 p.m. By 6:00, clips were spreading across social media. By 7:00, Eleanor Simmons had released her photographs, and 3 more families had come forward with their own evidence. By midnight, the hashtag Justice for Willowbrook was trending worldwide. Sarah watched the numbers climb from her living room. Ruth asleep in her arms, Earl dozing on the couch, Lisa scrolling through reactions on her phone. "People are telling their own stories," Lisa said quietly. "In the comments, thousands of them. People whose grandparents were victims. People whose families were driven out of towns. People who have been carrying secrets for decades. She looked up at Sarah. You opened a floodgate. You know that, right? I just told the truth about one house in one town. The rest is them. No, Sarah. The rest is you too. Because you showed them it was possible. You showed them that one person can make a difference, even when everything seems hopeless. The phone rang. Unknown number again. Sarah answered without hesitation this time. Mrs. Mitchell. A woman's voice, old and trembling. My name is Dorothy Harrison. I lived in your house before it was sold to the bank. I was Harold Henderson's daughter-in-law. Sarah sat up straighter. You're Earl's family. I was married to his brother Marcus. Marcus has been dead for 20 years now, but I know things, Mrs. Mitchell. Things I've never told anyone. Things about Harold. About what he did. About what really happened to Ruth. Dorothy's voice broke. I'm 91 years old. I don't have much time left, and I don't want to die with this inside me. Sarah looked at Earl, still sleeping, unaware that another piece of his family's history was about to emerge. Tell me, she said. Tell me everything. Dorothy talked for 2 hours. Sarah listened, taking notes, asking questions, piecing together a picture that was even more complicated than she had imagined. When the call finally ended, she sat in the darkness of her living room, the weight of new knowledge pressing down on her shoulders. Earl stirred, waking slowly. What time is it? Almost midnight. Earl, there's something you need to know. She told him about Dorothy, about the things she had revealed, about the parts of the story that had never been told. Earl listened in silence. When she finished, he was crying. My brother, he said. Marcus knew too, all along, and he never said anything. He was trying to protect you. According to Dorothy, Marcus spent his whole life trying to make up for what his father did. He donated money to civil rights organizations. He funded scholarships for black students. He wrote letters to Ruth's mother, anonymously apologizing for things he never told anyone he knew about. Why didn't he just tell the truth? Because he was afraid. Afraid of destroying the family. Afraid of what it would do to you, to your mother. Afraid that the truth would hurt more than it helped. Sarah reached for Earl's hand. He was wrong. The truth always helps eventually. But he didn't know that. He was just trying to survive. Earl sat with that for a long moment. Then he looked at Sarah with eyes that held something new, something softer. My whole family was broken by what my father did. Ruth, Marcus, me. Even the people who weren't directly involved, we all carried it. We all suffered for it. He squeezed her hand. But now it's over. The silence is over. The secrets are over. And maybe finally, we can start to heal. The morning came gently. Sarah woke to the sound of Ruth babbling in her crib, the sun streaming through windows that no longer felt like barriers, but like openings. She changed the baby, fed her, carried her downstairs where Earl was already making breakfast. Eggs again. Sarah smiled. Best comfort food there is. My mother taught me that. They ate together, the three of them, a makeshift family formed by tragedy and held together by hope. Ruth smeared egg on her face and laughed at her own messiness. Earl told stories about his sister, the real ones, now the ones that included love and loss, and the boy named James, who had died beside her. Sarah listened and held her daughter and felt for the first time since she had arrived in Willowbrook that she was truly home. After breakfast, they walked to the memorial. It had become a routine, this pilgrimage to the place where Ruth Henderson and the others were remembered. The stone markers stood in the morning light, names carved, deep flowers fresh from the many people who still came to pay respects. Sarah set Ruth down on the grass. The baby immediately began crawling toward a butterfly that had landed nearby. She has no idea what this place means, Earl said. Not yet. But someday she will. Someday I'll tell her the whole story. About her namesake. About the church. about the house and the roof and the bundles wrapped in fabric. Sarah watched her daughter reach for the butterfly missing by inches. I'll tell her about courage, about truth, about the people who fought so she could exist in a world a little bit better than the one they inherited. Earl knelt beside the memorial, touching the carved names with gentle fingers. I spent 60 years grieving you, he said quietly to his sister. 60 years wondering why you died, why you left me, why nothing ever made sense. He paused. But now I know. You died for love, Ruth. You died because you were brave enough to love someone the world said you couldn't have. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud to have been your brother. Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder. They stayed like that, the two of them united by loss, and by the healing that comes when truth finally sees the light. Later that afternoon, Sarah received a call from the mayor's office. A new mayor elected 6 months ago on a platform of transparency and accountability. She wanted to dedicate a plaque at Sarah's house, commemorating its role in exposing the town's hidden history. What do you think? Sarah asked Earl. I think your house has been a lot of things over the years. A headquarters for hate, a hiding place for secrets, a trap set by a brave man who knew he wouldn't live to see it spring. Earl looked at the small blue house that had changed everything. Maybe it's time for it to be something else. A symbol, a reminder, a promise that the truth always finds a way. Sarah thought about the first time she had seen this house. The sagging porch, the peeling siding, the roof that threatened to collapse. She had bought it because it was all she could afford, because she needed somewhere to bring her daughter, because she was desperate for stability in a life that had never had any. She had found so much more. Tell the mayor yes, she said, but I want the plaque to say something specific. What? Sarah smiled. The truth was hidden here. The truth was found here. The truth set us free. The dedication ceremony happened 2 weeks later. Hundreds of people gathered on Cedar Lane, spilling onto sidewalks and lawns, holding signs and flowers and photographs of loved ones lost to violence that had finally been named. Sarah stood on her newly rebuilt porch, Ruth in her arms, Earl and Lisa beside her. The mayor spoke about history and accountability. Diana broadcast the whole thing live. And when it was Sarah's turn to speak, she said only this: I came to Willowbrook looking for a home. I found something else instead. I found a history that had been buried. I found a community that had been broken. I found secrets that had poisoned everything they touched for 60 years. She looked at the faces gathered before her, black and white and brown, old and young, all of them joined by this moment. But I also found courage. In Earl Henderson, who lost everything and kept fighting. In Beatrice Coleman, who told her truth with her dying breath. In Thomas Walker, who built a trap he knew he wouldn't live to see spring. In Eleanor Simmons, who waited 50 years for permission to speak. Sarah's voice grew stronger. And I found it in myself. A woman who thought she was just fixing a roof and ended up fixing something much bigger. She held Ruth up so everyone could see her. This is my daughter. Her name is Ruth. She is the future we're building. She will grow up in a world where the truth matters, where the powerful can be held accountable, where the dead are remembered and the living are free. Sarah's eyes swept across the crowd. That world exists because ordinary people chose to be brave, because they refused to stay silent, because they understood that the truth is always worth fighting for. She lowered Ruth back into her arms and spoke her final words. I am Sarah Mitchell. I fixed my roof and found a history. And I will never ever stop telling this story until every hidden truth is brought to light and every buried secret is finally set free. The crowd erupted in applause. Ruth clapped her small hands together, not understanding why, but feeling the energy all around her. Earl was crying openly. Lisa had her phone out recording everything. And somewhere in the crowd, Sarah could have sworn she saw Beatrice Coleman's face, young and beautiful and smiling, standing beside a girl who looked just like Ruth Henderson, must have looked at 17, both of them watching with approval as the world finally learned what they had always known. The truth had been hidden. The truth had been found, and the truth finally had set them free.